Hey there, welcome to your next class of Management 386. Today we're going to continue the conversation that we started about what cards have you been dealt and how should you best play those cards to be most successful. Today you're going to need to have something to take notes on. I give a lot of information to you in today's lecture that is really not written anywhere. So be sure that you take really good notes. If you need to pause for just a moment to go get some paper and pen, please do that because I'm going to start with an exercise and I'm going to want you to write some things down. So get your paper and pen, pencil, however you take notes, get it ready. Okay, I want you to take a second and think. What are 5 different complaints that you have heard or something you have yourself complained about in the last day or so? I want you to list on your paper 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause me and take just a moment to think and write down 5 complaints either you complained about or things you heard someone else complain about. Okay, now that you have the complaints down, let's think about that. Why in the world would I ask you to think about things people were complaining about in the context of an entrepreneurship class? Well, the reason for that is every time I hear someone complain, I hear ching, 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 ching. I hear money. Remember, I told you businesses exist to solve a problem. When I hear someone complain, I know that there's a problem. So I start to listen more closely. This is practicing entrepreneurial awareness, something I've mentioned to you earlier. Now, when you hear someone complain, look at your list, think about those complaints. Did you jump on the complaint train with them and start complaining too? Or did you listen to what they were complaining about or you were complaining about and think, well, if we did XYZ, maybe it would work differently. How many times have you been standing in line at a fast food restaurant and it wasn't moving as quickly or as efficiently as you thought it should? How many times did you stand there and complain and be like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe this blah, blah, blah. Or did you look around and say, if they change this and that, this would all move much quicker? You see, the two differences there is jumping on the complaint train is not an entrepreneurial mindset. Looking for solutions when a problem exists is an entrepreneurial mindset. Now, the truth is we all notice these problems around us. But the people who notice them as opportunities are using entrepreneurial awareness. And further, they're using their entrepreneurial mindset. Now, this takes practice. And it's something that we'll practice throughout this semester, but I want you to be really aware of it. So you wrote down 5 complaints. Now, I don't know what you wrote down, but I can talk to you about some of the ones that I heard in class today. We did an icebreaker, and everyone in the class named one complaint, something they complained about or something they heard. And I heard multiple people complain about the weather. It's really cold today. So they complained about cold. I heard people complain about the lack of parking on campus. If you haven't been there lately, we know that parking is a premium, both in how much you pay and can you find it close to where you want to be. And I heard people complain about a lot of the students were having Wi-Fi problems. So we heard a lot of complaints about slow Wi-Fi, bad Wi-Fi, or it completely being out. Now, the complaints that I just told you about and the complaints that you wrote down are simply observations. Businesses exist to solve problems, not observations. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we go to the next level? How do we make these observations, hear the complaints, see problems or see issues, and then really articulate the problem? Now I'm going to share screen with you here so we can laugh at my inability to use this digital whiteboard. Bear with me again. Here we go. Okay, so now we have the digital whiteboard up. Now let's go back and review just briefly. We spent a lot of time talking about the individual and being self-aware. All of this culminated in the assignment that you just did where you listed your strengths and weaknesses. Hopefully, as you were doing this, you included knowledge that you felt like you had within your bounded rationale. I hope that you included information about some of the traits we learned about, some of the behaviors and attitudes that we learned about, self-efficacy, locus of control, those types of things, the big five. But also, this should include skills that you have or don't have. This should include resources. And it should also include maybe your network that you do or don't have. So here, this gives us a really good idea of what our cards are in our hand. Next thing that we learned is that we want to decrease uncertainty. Uncertainty resides right here outside of your bounded rationale. But if we build an effective A team that is made up of individuals that have different sets of strengths and weaknesses than we do, then this A team should increase our collective bounded rationale. The larger our circle, the more we're decreasing uncertainty. And that is one of our goals in business. Now, we know that businesses exist to solve a problem. So, how do we see that problem? How do we figure it out? One way is by using our entrepreneurial awareness, looking around for something out of the ordinary. Remember that question? Or listening for complaints. Lots of ways that we can see this. Once we do that, then we can start to list out what we see as observations. Remember, businesses exist to solve a problem, not an observation. So, how do we take it further? Now, you guys are going to read about Timon's model of entrepreneurship coming up, but I'm going to give you a sneak peek. If you're in Management 387, you've already heard this. But Timon's model of entrepreneurship tells us that entrepreneurship is actually market driven. And that means that the market has a problem they want solved. And we as entrepreneurs are going to provide the solution. But if our entrepreneurial awareness only gives us observations, how do we get to the real problem? Now, universally, this is something that the students have a hard time with. And I've noticed over the past several years when I get you students to say, okay, observations, it's cold. People are complaining about it's cold. People are complaining about the Wi-Fi. Whatever your complaints are, now tell me, well, what is the real problem? And the problem is associated with how does that observation make the market feel? How do you feel? When you're cold, do you feel miserable, frustrated, uncomfortable? When your Wi-Fi doesn't work and you're trying to do homework, do you feel frustrated, stressed, cheated because you paid for it? There's lots of ways that we can feel. And it is imperative that we as entrepreneurs get really good at identifying the real problem, because how customers are feeling is what we're trying to solve. We're either trying to eliminate pain and we're trying to help them gain something. But if you don't know what they're feeling because of the observation, then one, we don't know what the real problem is. And two, we have no idea how to really give them a solution. So I've noticed, like I said, in the past several years, students universally have a hard time doing this. Now, when we talk about this on a surface level, this sounds really easy. But this is one of those things easier said than done. And what we know is that to go from the observation to the problem, you have to learn how to practice empathy. Empathy. That is the big deciding factor. Now, empathy itself is very simple. It's putting yourself in someone else's shoes so that you can understand what they're thinking and how they're feeling. Very simply put, that makes sense. I observed some students were complaining about the cold. Well, I'm going to put myself in their shoes so that I can try to start to understand their problem and how they feel. Now, empathy is a learned skill. Some people think that you're born kind or you're not. That's just kind of the way it rolls. Empathy can make you more kind, but that's really not what empathy is. Empathy is really just about being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So let's talk more about empathy. What I figured out is, like I said, students had a really hard time over the past few years with coming up with really good entrepreneurial solutions. And the reason that they had problems coming up with good entrepreneurial solutions is because they really couldn't identify the problem. And it was one of those things where sometimes it's just so obvious, it's right in front of your face, you can't see it. And I was just sitting back last semester thinking and thinking, like, what is it? What is it? Like, I tell them, have empathy, just have empathy. And then it was like, ding, ding, ding. Oh my gosh. Empathy is a learned skill. And while I told you what it was and I told you to go do it, I never really taught you how or gave you the opportunity to practice it and to build that skill. It's just like you're going to develop some empathy muscle memory. I'm sure a lot of you have played sports or you've done something where you had to, or maybe even music, where you had to develop muscle memory. Well, we're going to develop the same thing in our mind with exercising entrepreneurial awareness, with exercising empathy. So the more that we do it, the more that it will become second nature for us. So how do we do this? How do we start to practice empathy more? First and foremost, to practice empathy, you got to understand something really big. And we'll talk more about this on Thursday too. Let's go back over here. Now, we know that this is true, that you have your bounded rationale. Everything inside that is your strengths, your weaknesses, and yours is unique. Yours is different than everyone else's in the world. Well, because yours is unique, then it affects the way that you see the world. Those are your glasses. Isn't that terrible? The way you see the world. However, you've been shaped. I don't know why my pen's doing that. Sorry, guys. This has shaped your perspective. Everything inside your bounded rationale, your experiences, your knowledge, the time, people you surround yourself with, your culture, all affects the way you see the world. You have your own unique set of glasses that you look through. In turn, so does everyone else. Everyone has their own set of little goggles that they look at the world through. Empathy is the ability to take off your glasses and not let it jade what you see, and to put on their glasses and see how they see the world. Now, this is a really grown-up, mature skill. And I'm not kidding. It's really hard to take off your glasses and put theirs on because sometimes you don't agree with them. This is a key to empathy. To be able to practice empathy, it does not mean you have to agree. You don't have to. All you have to do is understand. So, for example, I don't agree with violence. However, if I look back at the riots and the protests that have happened over the last 12 months, whether it was Black Lives Matter or if it was the attack on the Capitol building, I don't agree with the violence and breaking the law. But when I put myself in their shoes and look at the world through their glasses, then I can understand how they're angry, how they're hurt, and how they feel like no one hears them. to the point that it's made them so angry that they lashed out with violence. Now, while I don't agree with the way that people lash out, I can sit back and take my glasses off and put theirs on to try to better understand why it resorted in violence. And the ability to do that is key in being able to develop a solution. Now, we're going to do this in an entrepreneurial context, of course, but empathy, I'm telling you, developing this skill is going to be your ticket to success. Empathy is key in developing relationships, and it is also the foundation of design thinking, which you'll learn more about in a couple of days, which is how we will talk about driving innovation in the entrepreneurial process. So this is huge. What I want you to do is to think back on the complaints that you wrote down now and look at them. Think about the person complaining. Maybe it was you. Maybe it was someone around you. What do you think they were feeling? Now, if it's hard for you to come up with feeling words, maybe you need to go on Google and Google emotional literacy, emotional vocabulary. The truth is that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words to describe different ways that we feel. Frustrated, discouraged, angry, stressed, disappointed. Those are all very different feelings. But sometimes we express them as one word, I'm mad. But the truth is, you could be mad a lot of ways. Think about it. So go out, and if you don't have a really big emotions vocabulary, go Google some and try to grow it. Do yourself a favor, because the more that you can name, the better you can be at empathy. And go back and think on your complaints. What were these people feeling? So for example, we talked about the people with the Wi-Fi. They were feeling frustrated. They were feeling cheated. They were stressed. They were anxious because they needed to get their homework done and couldn't. They needed to study. One of them said, I had to go somewhere else to find some Wi-Fi, so they were inconvenienced. The more that you can pinpoint the way people feel, then the better you'll be at delivering solutions. So let's think about Wi-Fi. Bad Wi-Fi is the observation. The problem is they were frustrated. I'm not going to write all these out. Inconvenienced, stressed. They felt cheated because they've paid a lot for their Wi-Fi. They were anxious. That's a good place to stop. Now we need to develop an entrepreneurial solution. So you see here, if you stuck with trying to solve the observation, then all you would do is think of alternative Wi-Fi things to do. That might work, it might not. But what if we try to solve the problem? So what we're trying to do and solve the problem is, what solutions can we come up with that would help the market not feel this? And we ran through this, and you can just sit down and think, start brainstorming, think outside of the box. When you're brainstorming, there is no wrong answer. Just list as many solutions as you can think of. I'll get you started, and then I want you to pause it, and I want you to think of some. So one of the ones that someone came up today was, they said, well, what if you sold, like, you can take around a replacement battery? What if somebody just had like pocket hotspots? Well, that's a good one. Okay. Someone else said, well, what if there was just a database out there that you could do homework on, that you didn't have to be online? So an offline database. I mean, it's far-fetched, but maybe it would work. So you can kind of see, let's start listing out several. Now I want you to pause me for just a minute, and I want you to stop, and I want you to think, and I want you to write down at least 3 ideas for how to solve this. And make sure that the ideas you come up with, that we can make money off of it. So pause me for just a minute and then we'll come back. Okay, I hope that you were able to come up with different ideas to put here. Now you see, this is how easy it is to come up with an idea to start a business. It's just that easy. I have lots of people who say, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't have an idea. And that is because when people try to develop ideas to start businesses, they think they have to be the next Steve Jobs or the next Jeff Bezos. That's just not the truth. All you have to do is see a problem, have empathy, develop a solution, deliver it better than your competition, and you're golden. Coming up with an idea is not that hard. Not at all. Like I said, the key here is developing good empathy skills. So one way to start with this is to start to increase your emotions vocabulary. The next way that you can really start to increase your empathy skills, let me write these down, is really listening. Really, really listening. I'll give you an article about active listening. It matters. So you have to start to listen. I call it listening between the lines. These are some really good ways to start practicing your empathy skills. And remember, you have to really do this from a place of detachment, a place of mindfulness. And what that means is you're aware of your perspective and the glasses that you use to see the world. And you have the ability to take off those glasses and put on someone else's and look through them and describe what you see. Putting on those glasses and describing what you see is not the same as agreeing with them. You don't have to agree with them, but you do have to be able to describe what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And these are some really good ways to start with empathy. Now, I'm telling you, like I said, empathy is a really grown-up, mature skill. It's something that when I talk about this here with you, it really sounds like, well, I can do that. Anybody can do that, right? Maybe. I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. Maybe. I mean, and this is the way it works in class. When I talk about it on surface level, it's all super intuitive. And you're like, oh yeah, you didn't teach me anything I didn't know, blah, blah. Well, like I told you, it's easier said than done. Because universally, my students have a hard time identifying the problem from the observation. And I try to relate it to this. Every one of you are smart. I mean, you've made it this far in your life and in college. You're smart. And if I gave you a book to read on how to fly an airplane, I am quite sure that you could read and study the book. And if I gave you a paper test, you could pass the test. But does that mean that you could get into the cockpit and fly the airplane? No, it doesn't. And it's the same with empathy. Just because you know what it is and you can talk about it and you can pass a test, which you're going to have next week, does not mean that you can do it. You have to get out and practice. Now, I'm going to challenge you to do this. Challenge you to take off your glasses and put on someone else's and see how well you do. A really good way to do this is to think about the news channels you watch. Now, on Thursday, we're going to talk more about biases, but here's a good way to start practicing to understand kind of what's happening. By and large, most individuals only watch the news channel that corresponds with your political beliefs. We don't watch the other one. And it doesn't matter which it is, whether you're watching CNN or you're watching Fox. Most people only watch the one they agree with. Now, the one that you watch isn't wrong. It's not. But the truth is, it's only half the story. It's only your perspective that you agree with. Challenge yourself for the next couple of days to watch the other news channel. Like I said, I'm not asking you to agree with whichever channel you watch, the other channel. You don't have to. But can you put on their glasses and can you begin to understand why they're saying what they're saying and why they feel the way they feel? It's like being able to play devil's advocate with yourself. Can you do that? Because once you learn how to do that, can you go over there and do it? Take off your glasses, put on theirs, watch their news channel, and do it without getting mad. I'm telling you, it's easier said than done. But you have to practice this skill. And it's something that happens over time. You're going to build that muscle memory if you just try. Now, I know it's difficult. I know it's a hurdle to jump over, but I promise you, if you can develop your skills of empathy and get really good at it, it's going to serve you so well. Empathy is, like I said, it's the foundation for relationship building. It's the foundation for design think, which is the process that we're going to use in this class to talk about developing innovations. It is going to help you on Valentine's Day. Perhaps you have a sweetie and you're wanting to do something nice for that person for Valentine's Day. Well, then take my advice. Use your entrepreneurial awareness to start listening to your significant other and see if you can pinpoint some observations where they're feeling some pain. Got a problem. Maybe they're complaining about something. After you identify that observation, then sit back and think. Based on that observation, how is your sweetie feeling? Are they feeling sad, frustrated, overwhelmed, burnout, hungry? I don't know. What are they feeling? Don't say a word. Just observe and think. And then for Valentine's Day, go buy something for them that solves that problem. You'll blow them away. You will blow them away. Have you ever been on the receiving side of empathy? When someone has anticipated your needs and has delivered, do you remember how good it feels? You see, when you're on the receiving side of empathy, you feel seen, you feel heard, and you feel valued. As business owners and entrepreneurs, we want to develop a business that solves problems for our market. When our customers shop with us, we want them to feel seen, we want them to feel heard, and we want them to feel valued. If we can deliver that, they'll come back time and time and time again. Give it a go with taking your glasses off, putting on other glasses, and watching the other news channel. Give this whole empathy thing a go with your sweetie. Let me know how it goes for Valentine's Day. Do it with people around you. I look forward to hearing your stories, and I look forward to hearing how it's going. For next class, I noticed that on the schedule, I had failed to read chapter 3. I'm going to go back and correct that tonight. Please read chapter 3 and the readings on empathy, biases, and we're going to talk more and dive more into developing empathy, and we're going to talk about obstacles to empathy and why it's so hard for us. I'm going to give you a project to do on Tuesday. I know that you can decide if you want to do this solo or if you want to do this in teams, but you are going to get a project on Tuesday where you're going to have to start listing observations, identifying problems, and coming up with some good entrepreneurial solutions for those. And you're going to have an exam on Thursday, the 11th, that is based, excuse me, on all of this material. So just giving you a heads up there. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Don't forget to practice your empathy. Have a good night.